My name is Goldie Summers. I'm 29 years old. And the night I got that message at 3:11 a.m., everything I thought I knew about love and trust shattered. It read, "Miss you already, M. Just 2 more nights in Phoenix." That was it. A sweet, simple message. But it landed like a gut punch. Not because of the words. Mason sent me messages like that all the time. No, it was the timing. The way it lit up my phone in the darkness of my bedroom. The way it made my heart pound, not with excitement, but with dread. A dread that had been clawing at my insides for months. That quiet, crawling feeling women get when something isn't adding up. I stared at the ceiling for a long time, my body frozen, my mind spinning. Mason Langford had always been the kind of man who made you feel like you were the only woman in the world. At 35, he had the look of quiet power, tall, broad-shouldered, steel-gray eyes, and a calm voice that made everything sound like a promise. We met at an industry conference in Austin. I worked in healthcare marketing. He was director of market development for a medical device firm. The kind of title that sounded important but vague enough to keep you guessing. It was the little things that pulled me in. The way he'd send flowers without a card, like he wanted me to know he was thinking of me, but without needing credit. The way he'd remember my coffee order even after I switched it up once. The way he always kissed my forehead after dropping me off, like something out of a novel. But that night, lying awake in my midtown Houston apartment, I realized all those little things had become a smokescreen. We had been together for almost 10 months. Yet I had only been to his apartment 4 times. And each time, it felt like walking into a hotel suite. Spotless. Impersonal. Cold. No laundry baskets. No family photos. Not even an old toothbrush in the bathroom. "Is this really your place?" I once asked, trying to hide my nerves behind a laugh. "Yeah, but I'm hardly ever here," he said, smiling. "Mostly traveling or heading home on the weekends." Home. That word had stuck with me. Because whatever home was, it wasn't with me. I pulled up my laptop and typed in something I had been too scared to do before: Texas public property records. I remembered him saying once, offhand, that he grew up in Clear Lake Shores. It was a small town about 40 minutes southeast of Houston. I didn't expect to find much. But then his name popped up like a ghost. Mason W. Langford. And another name beside it. Jennifer K. Langford. At first, I stared at the screen, hoping, praying she was a sister. Or an ex. Or even a roommate. But the details crushed every last hope. A shared property. A 2-story house. All utilities in both their names. 1 mailing address. 1 shared mortgage. I didn't need a DNA test to know the truth. I staggered into the bathroom, gripped the sink, and stared at myself. The smart, careful woman I thought I was looked back at me with blank, hollow eyes. I had trusted a man who built a life on lies, and I was just a side character in his story. But I wasn't going to cry. Not yet. Not until I had proof. Not until I had the truth laid bare where no amount of charm or excuses could bury it. I spent the rest of the night planning. I wouldn't call him. I wouldn't send a single text. Because Mason was a master talker. If I let him talk, I'd end up believing a new lie, wearing a new blindfold. No. This time, I wasn't going to be a passive participant in his carefully scripted life. I packed a binder with fake documents from a past consulting job. Draft contracts. Strategy proposals. Nothing real, but they looked real. I labeled the folder. Langford Holdings, urgent signature required. I wore a beige office dress. No makeup, just lip balm. My hair in a neat bun. I took the train south to League City, then a cab to Clear Lake Shores. The whole trip took just over an hour, but it felt like I was traveling through time, shedding old versions of myself with every mile. The house was straight out of a Hallmark movie. 2 stories, white trim, a soft gray facade, and a white picket fence. There were lavender bushes along the front walk, blooming politely like nothing had ever gone wrong inside. I rang the bell with my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear it chime. She answered the door with a smile. Jennifer Langford. 5'2", light brown hair in soft waves, blue jeans and a white blouse. She looked exactly like the kind of woman Mason would marry, grounded, kind, quiet. She tilted her head at me. Yes? I held up the folder. Hi. I'm Emma. From Vision Med, Mason asked me to drop off some urgent documents. He mentioned he'd be working from home today? Jennifer frowned. He said what? That he needed these signed for a partner in San Diego by this afternoon. I can wait, if that's easier. She hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might slam the door in my face. But then she opened it wider. Come in. Would you like some tea? And just like that, I was inside. I sat on their couch. The air smelled like cinnamon. A family home. Cozy. Lived in. Real. And right in front of me, on the fireplace mantel, was the wedding photo. Jennifer in a lace-sleeved gown. Mason in the same navy suit he once wore to a date with me. Next to it, photos of camping trips, birthdays, even a card with the words 10-year anniversary. From the partner who's grateful every day. 10 years. I almost laughed. I hadn't even made it to 12 months. Jennifer returned with 2 teacups. So, what department are you in again? She asked. West Coast Partnerships, I lied quickly. Just joined a few months ago. She smiled. That makes sense. He doesn't talk about work much at home. Says it's his way of disconnecting. I nodded, sipping the tea to keep my hands steady. She had no idea she was talking to the woman her husband kissed 3 days ago at a hotel in downtown Houston. Then the garage door opened. Jennifer looked up. That must be Mason. I stayed seated. The door opened. Footsteps. Keys clattered into a bowl. And then, babe? His voice rang out, a mix of casual and cautious. Then he walked in. And saw me. His eyes froze. The color drained from his face. Jennifer turned, smiling. Emma brought some papers for you to sign. I raised the teacup. Hi, Mason. Surprised? He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared at me like I was a ghost come back to life. And that's when everything truly began to unravel. Mason looked like his soul had been yanked out of his body. He was still holding the same sleek black laptop case I'd seen by my bedside less than a week ago. His tie was perfectly knotted, like he'd dressed that morning thinking everything was still under control. But that illusion was dead now. Jennifer hadn't picked up on the tension yet. She smiled at him like any loving wife would. She said you needed these signed before sending them to California, Jennifer offered. Mason didn't even look at the folder. His eyes were still glued to me, his mouth barely moving. Emma, Emma, I said sharply. Funny how you remember my name now. Jennifer turned to him, confusion etched across her face. Wait, you two know each other? I stood up slowly, still calm but with ice running through my veins. Know each other? I echoed. We've been in a relationship for almost a year. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence. The kind that creeps in just before a storm rips everything apart. Jennifer's mouth parted, her eyes narrowing. What are you saying? I looked at her gently, with as much compassion as I could muster. I thought Mason was single. He told me he lived alone in a downtown apartment. That he wasn't ready to settle down because of work. That he wanted to take things slow, but that he loved me. Jennifer's hand trembled. Her teacup slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor with a piercing crack. "Jen, baby, listen," Mason blurted, stepping forward, reaching out to her. But she stepped back so quickly, it was like she'd been burned. "Don't touch me," she gasped. "Is this a joke?" "It's not," I said. "And I'm so sorry you're hearing it this way. But I thought you deserved the truth." Jennifer's legs gave out and she dropped into a nearby chair, clutching her head. "Mason, is this true?" He tried to stammer out a denial, but no coherent words came. Just a weak, pathetic shrug. I almost pitied him. "You told me your parents died in college," I continued, looking directly at him. "That you had no one left. You said that Thanksgiving was the hardest time of year for you." Jennifer's head snapped up. "You called your mom 3 days ago." He blinked. I didn't want to talk about personal stuff with Emma. That's all." "Personal stuff?" I repeated, my voice razor sharp. "You mean like the weekend getaway in Galveston? Or the plan to move in together in September?" Jennifer gasped. "Move in?" I nodded. He said the lease on his apartment was ending and that he wanted a fresh start, with me. Mason looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Jennifer was breathing heavily, trying to process it all. "How long?" she whispered. "October," I said softly. "Almost 11 months now." Jennifer shook her head slowly, like trying to wake up from a nightmare. "And during that time, he told me he wasn't ready for kids. Because of work stress. But I've been going to fertility consultations. Alone." My heart broke for her. I looked at Mason again, not with anger anymore, but with complete detachment. "Tell her the truth," I said. "Right here. Right now. Were you ever serious about me?" He hesitated. His silence screamed louder than any confession ever could. Jennifer rose from her chair, her face pale, her voice flat. "You used my love as a mask. And I didn't even know." At that moment, the doorbell rang. The three of us turned, the tension in the air so thick it could have cracked stone. Jennifer wiped her eyes, pulling herself together. "Did you invite someone else?" Mason shook his head. Jennifer walked to the door and opened it cautiously. A young woman in her mid-20s stood outside, dressed in a gray pencil skirt and carrying a black leather bag. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on me. Her jaw clenched. She recognized me. "I'm Bailey," she said uncertainly. "Mr. Langford's assistant. He asked me to deliver these documents." Jennifer's head turned like a turret toward Mason. "Your assistant?" Bailey stepped inside, her voice faltering as she glanced between us. "I didn't know." I thought. "You didn't know he still lived with his wife?" I asked calmly. Bailey froze. "Wait, what?" Jennifer folded her arms. "Why don't you sit down, Bailey?" The girl looked like she was about to cry. She set the documents down and slowly backed toward the table. Mason tried to speak. "This is getting out of hand." "No," I said. "This is justice catching up to you." Jennifer's voice was surprisingly calm now. She'd slipped into a state I recognized all too well, the cold, focused clarity of a woman who's passed the point of heartbreak and stepped into strategy. "Bailey, how long have you known Mason?" She hesitated. "Since May." I blinked. In May, he told me he was in San Antonio for contract meetings. Took me to Lake Charles for a business getaway. Bailey looked horrified. He said he was in New Orleans with clients. We all turned toward Mason. But he had nothing left. His hands were shaking. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. Jennifer pulled out her phone and calmly sat down. "We need to compare dates. Let's lay it all out." Bailey pulled out her own phone. I followed suit. In less than 10 minutes, we had the beginnings of a timeline, a shocking, undeniable record of betrayal. Same dates. Different excuses. Same lies. Different women. Jennifer's voice had turned cold and clipped. You arranged us like meetings. Like departments. Scheduled and rotated. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Then Jennifer looked at the sleek black briefcase Mason had left near the front door. A folder was sticking out. She walked over and picked it up. Don't, Mason said, but she ignored him. She pulled the folder open. Inside were bank statements. Joint accounts. Recurring wire transfers. One of them jumped out at me. Avalon Apartments, $2,200 per month. My stomach turned. That was the apartment he claimed was his personal residence. You used our money to pay for the place where you cheated on me? Jennifer asked, shaking now. I can explain, Mason muttered. No, I said, stepping forward. You can't. Not anymore. Jennifer walked to a drawer, pulled out a small voice recorder, and slammed it on the table. You used to practice your work pitches with this, she said, pressing record. Now it's my turn. Jennifer's voice was quiet, but every syllable felt sharp as broken glass. She pressed the record button and looked directly at her husband, not with tears, not with rage, but with cold, calculated clarity. The kind that makes men like Mason sweat before a single word is spoken. You've been pulling money from our joint account every month, Mason, she said, her voice low. Transferring it to something called Westview Holdings. Want to tell me what that is? It's a business fund, Mason muttered. A private account for a startup idea. I was going to surprise you. Jennifer held up one of the documents. You mean this startup? The one listed at Avalon Apartments? The same address where you told Emma she could move in with you? His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Go on, she pressed. Explain. Bailey had sat down next to me, her hands trembling. I could feel her breath hitch beside me. I left my job because of him, she whispered. He promised equity. Said he needed someone loyal to help him build the next big thing. I looked over. Did you give him anything? Personal info? Financial? Her eyes watered. Yes. My resume, bank info, my SSN. Everything. Jennifer's jaw tightened. I'm not just angry anymore. I'm disgusted. Then she turned back to the recorder. Let's make this clear, Mason. You've lied to your wife, maintained a second residence using marital funds, deceived Emma, and convinced a third woman to leave her job based on a fake business promise. This isn't just betrayal. This could be criminal. Mason lunged forward, reaching for the voice recorder. Don't you dare. Jennifer barked, grabbing it and stepping back. Bailey shot up too, now standing. You don't get to take this from us. Mason's eyes darted around the room like a trapped animal. You three are trying to ruin my life. This is entrapment. No, I said, my voice low and unwavering. This is accountability. Jennifer turned toward the fireplace cabinet and pulled out a binder I hadn't seen before. She flipped it open and showed us the prenup. You signed this, she said to Mason. Clause B, misuse of joint assets for extramarital activities voids your share of the house and savings. This isn't just about emotions anymore. You lose everything. You can't do this, he rasped. I already have, Jennifer said, her tone final. The account has been frozen. My father is senior VP at the bank, you remember. I called him an hour ago. Every transaction since your first Avalon payment is under review. Bailey reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. I also backed up every email you sent me. All the promises. All the confidential info forwarded to your personal account. Mason's face went pale. I've already given a copy to my lawyer, she added. Jennifer turned the recorder off and slid it into her pocket. Then she picked up her phone. You have two choices, Mason. Leave quietly, or I'll call the police and your office. Your reputation will be ash before noon. Jen, please, I didn't mean for this to go so far, he pleaded. You didn't mean for us to find out, she corrected him. But here we are. He sank into a chair, defeated, his hands trembling over his knees. The same hands that once cupped my face with such tenderness now looked useless, empty. Jennifer stepped closer to him, eyes burning. Tell me, how many more women are out there? Or are we the only three you thought were dumb enough to fall for your script? He didn't respond. Silence is an answer, I said quietly. We don't need you to say anything. You've already said enough by saying nothing. Jennifer took a deep breath. You have 5 minutes to gather your things. After that, I'm changing every lock, calling your office, and filing for divorce this week. Mason looked up at her with one final glimmer of hope. I still have rights. You had them, she replied, before you used me like a human ATM. He stood slowly, staggering toward the hallway. His whole body seemed smaller somehow, like the weight of his lies had finally crushed the confident man he pretended to be. When he was gone, Jennifer sat back down at the table. Her hands trembled now. The adrenaline had passed, and the rawness of what just happened was sinking in. Bailey let out a breath. I can't believe I ever trusted him. Jennifer looked at both of us. I did too. For 10 years. I reached across the table and placed my hand gently over hers. But now you're free. She nodded, her eyes misty. I used to think confronting him would break me. But it didn't. It's the lie that broke me. The truth is setting me free. Bailey stood and grabbed her bag. I need to find a lawyer. And probably a therapist. Jennifer gave a small smile. We all might. We walked out of the house together. As I stepped into the Uber I had called earlier, I looked back at Jennifer. She gave me a tired but genuine nod. Thank you, she said. If you hadn't come today, I might never have known. You opened the door, I replied. That takes courage. As the car pulled away, I looked down at my lap. The empty folder that had once been part of my trap now sat quietly beside me. No more games. No more lies. Just the truth, and 3 women who'd walked through hell and found the fire within themselves. I didn't sleep that night. Back in my apartment, I just sat on the edge of my bed staring at the folder I no longer needed. It was empty now, just a prop, just like Mason's promises. I thought I'd cry, that the wave of everything would crash down on me the second I walked through my front door. But instead, there was only stillness. Like my soul had gone quiet from exhaustion. I scrolled through our old messages, wondering how I'd ever fallen for it. The thinking of you texts, the playlists he made, the candid selfies during conferences, all felt like sick jokes now. I deleted them. One by one. No rage. Just a quiet, surgical purge. The next morning, I got a text from Jennifer. Lawyer appointment booked. Locks changed. Thank you for everything. I replied simply. You're stronger than you think. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. By noon, Bailey called. She sounded frantic at first, but her voice settled as she explained what her attorney had already begun reviewing. Breach of promise, fraudulent employment claims, misuse of confidential information, and potential identity theft if Mason had filed anything using her credentials. I offered to send her all the files Mason had forwarded to me during our time together. She nearly cried. You really think we could take him down legally? She asked. I don't think, I said. I know. By the end of the week, the avalanche had begun. Jennifer's father, who worked at the very bank where their joint accounts were held, had initiated a full internal audit. Bailey's lawyer had contacted Mason's firm's HR department to report his questionable use of company resources and his mishandling of private client data. Me? I sat back and watched as the empire he'd built on charm and lies began to crumble. One afternoon, I received a message that made me pause. It was from Mason. "Please. Can we talk? One last time." I didn't respond. I didn't even open it at first. But later, curiosity pulled me in. The message went on for several paragraphs. Apologies. Excuses. Weak declarations of confusion. He said he never meant to hurt any of us. He said he was in a dark place when he met me, that I reminded him of who he used to be. He said he'd already lost his job and didn't know what to do next. He ended it with, "I really did love you. Please believe that." But I didn't. Not anymore. If Mason had truly loved me, or Jennifer or Bailey, he would have never had to compartmentalize his life like a spreadsheet. He loved control, not people. I blocked his number. 3 weeks later, I got another email. This time from Jennifer. Subject line: Update if you care. I opened it while sipping coffee at a small cafe near Eleanor Tinsley Park, the same spot I used to dream of taking Mason someday. The email was brief but sharp. It's finally over. The court granted everything I asked for. I got the house, the savings, and even the SUV he tried to transfer to his cousin. His lawyer tried to fight it until my attorney dropped the prenup clause and evidence from your visit. He backed down after that. Also, HR confirmed questionable client expenses. He resigned before they could fire him. I guess some men implode faster when they're finally seen in full light. I read it twice. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to feel it. I needed to feel the weight of closure. She added at the end, "If your offer for coffee still stands, I could use one." And so we met. On a crisp April morning, we sat together at that rooftop cafe with the Houston skyline shimmering behind us. Jennifer looked different. Shorter hair. Clearer eyes. She wasn't haunted anymore. She looked free. "You look lighter," I said, smiling. "Lighter and smarter," she replied. We talked like women who had both touched the same fire, and emerged not burned, but refined. We didn't need to talk about Mason. He was a ghost now. Instead, we spoke about the books we were reading, the places we wanted to go, and the tiny joys of life we had forgotten to notice while stuck in his web. "I thought I'd never be able to trust again," I admitted. "I was more afraid I'd never trust myself," Jennifer said. "But I've learned something: trusting isn't the mistake. Trusting the wrong person is." Before we left, she handed me a small box wrapped in brown paper. I opened it to find a silver compass necklace. "I had 2 made," she said, pulling out a matching one from under her collar. "So that no matter what direction we're pulled in next, we remember, we've already found true north." My fingers trembled slightly as I clasped it around my neck. "Thank you," I whispered. "Not just for this, but for letting me in. When you had every reason to shut me out." Jennifer smiled. "You didn't destroy anything, Goldie. You opened the door I was most afraid to walk through. Sometimes, truth doesn't come to wreck us. It comes to set us free." We hugged. No tears. No drama. Just the bond of 2 women who had once unknowingly shared a man, and now shared something far more powerful: freedom. That night, I placed the compass on my nightstand next to my journal. For a long time, I just stared at it. Not with sadness, but with the fierce clarity of someone who finally knows exactly who she is. By the time spring fully settled over Houston, the dust around Mason Langford had turned to ash, and with it, any trace of the life he tried so hard to orchestrate behind closed doors. 3 months after that day at Jennifer's house, the fallout hit the local business papers. Nothing flashy, no full-page headlines. Just a terse blurb in the Houston Business Review under the Leadership Changes section. Effective immediately, Mason Langford has resigned as Director of Market Development at Fremont Medical Technologies. Internal restructuring and pending compliance reviews are ongoing. But behind those simple words was a whirlwind of consequences. What HR had discovered, thanks to Bailey's documented messages and forwarded company files, was enough to trigger a full audit. Unauthorized expense reports. Unapproved client entertainment budgets. A few private dinners tagged as business that clearly weren't. And worst of all, confidential files routed from company servers to his personal account. That business idea he had dangled in front of Bailey like a golden ticket? Vapor. Mason had never registered a company. Never created a product plan. Never pitched to a single investor. Just one more illusion, designed to keep her close, hopeful, loyal. And as for the Avalon apartment? Jennifer had made sure to bring it up in court. Her attorney had tied every payment from their joint account to Mason's misrepresentation of marital funds. The judge didn't even hesitate. Jennifer got full control of the estate and 80% of the liquid assets. Mason, once the man who held 3 women in separate corners of his life, now held nothing but guilt and empty hands. I found out later that he moved into a small rental outside of Katy. Alone. But by then, I was already rebuilding my life, not from scratch, but from strength. I had always been independent. But after Mason, I realized independence wasn't just about making your own money or living on your own terms. It was about trusting your instincts. Knowing when something doesn't feel right and refusing to brush it under the rug. I hadn't failed myself when I fell for him. I would have failed myself if I had stayed silent. I poured myself into my work with a new focus. My company offered me a promotion to regional lead after a project I headed landed us a deal with a major private clinic network. It was the kind of opportunity Mason used to say would be too much stress for me. I accepted it with quiet pride. One Saturday afternoon in early May, I was cleaning out my email when a name from the past popped up. Bailey. Her message was short, but it made me smile. Guess what? I got accepted into the forensic accounting program at UT Austin. Starting this fall. Thank you for everything you did. For showing up. For speaking out. For not treating me like the other woman. I still wear the compass pendant sometimes. Helps me remember I'm not stupid, I'm just smarter now. I wrote back. You're going to be incredible. And Mason? He has no idea what kind of storm he helped create. Later that day, I got another message. From Jennifer. I sold the house. She included a photo of the empty living room. The fireplace, the white stone, the frame where their wedding photo once sat, now blank. Got a good price. Bought a townhome closer to the museum district. Walkable, cozy, and just mine. And I joined a book club. Small victories. I replied. The best victories are the ones you never expected to win. Let's toast to your next chapter soon. It was strange how healing never arrives in one dramatic wave. It's quiet. It's the first time you sleep through the night without checking your phone. It's standing in a mirror and no longer seeing the woman who was deceived, but the woman who uncovered the truth. It's sitting with the same silence that once broke you, and feeling peace instead. One day, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Mason. His voice was raspy, low. Goldie. I know you probably blocked me for good reason. But I needed to say something. I lost everything. My job, my marriage, my credibility. And I know I deserve that. But the thing I regret most was thinking I could manage love like a business. Like a series of tasks. You were never a task. You were the only part that felt real. I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. He never understood that what made me real wasn't the way I made him feel, it was the way I found the courage to walk away. And I never looked back. A few weeks later, Jennifer and I did have that toast. We met at a small rooftop bar in Montrose. It was golden hour. She looked radiant in a floral dress, sipping her drink with calm elegance. To the women we were, she said, raising her glass. To the women we became, I replied. We laughed, clinked glasses, and watched the sun sink over the city. By the time June arrived, I didn't think about Mason unless someone else brought him up, and even then, it felt like remembering a character from a bad dream. Not a man I once loved. But healing, I'd come to learn, wasn't just about forgetting pain. It was about reclaiming every piece of yourself that pain tried to steal. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand revenge. It just demanded truth, silence, and time. I was sitting on a park bench near Buffalo Bayou, writing in my journal, when a woman I barely recognized approached me. Her blonde hair was up in a twist, and she wore a conservative black pantsuit with scuffed heels. Her eyes were tired. "Are you Goldie?" she asked hesitantly. "Yes," I said cautiously. She sat beside me. "You don't know me. But I know Mason." Or. I thought I did. I was his executive assistant before Bailey. Until last fall. I turned to her fully now. "He promised me a job with his so-called startup," she said, twisting her hands. "Said if I gave him access to my admin logins and helped him clean up some reports, he'd make me head of operations once the new business launched." When I hesitated, he told me I didn't believe in him. That I'd never grow if I stayed where I was. My stomach turned. "You left the company?" "I did. And when I checked in 2 weeks later, he ghosted me. Said the funding fell through. But then I saw that HR notice. I saw your story circulating." "My story?" I asked, surprised. She nodded. "Bailey shared your confrontation anonymously in a private LinkedIn group for women in tech. It went viral, quietly. No names, but the story was unmistakable. A man juggling multiple women, draining bank accounts, and fabricating a business to manipulate loyalty." I swallowed hard. I never imagined our heartbreak would ripple outward like this. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said. "For not letting him keep the lie going. You saved more people than you realize." As she stood to leave, she pulled a small envelope from her purse and handed it to me. "Bailey's starting a digital project. It's called the Compass Collective. A place for women to share stories of being lied to, gaslit, used, and how they found their way back. She said you should be the first voice featured." I opened the envelope. Inside was a simple card. "Your voice turned the lights on. Want to help others do the same?" For a few moments, I just sat there, staring at the handwriting. I had spent months quietly rebuilding, recovering, resisting bitterness. I hadn't thought of sharing my story publicly. But something about that card, about Bailey turning her pain into purpose, about Jennifer reclaiming her power and selling the house that had become a mausoleum for her marriage, it felt right. That evening, I wrote a piece for the Compass Collective. I told the story not with rage, but with resolve. I didn't name him. I didn't need to. The point wasn't to humiliate him. The point was to illuminate every little lie women are taught to excuse. The sweet manipulation masked as romantic gestures. The disappearances dressed up as travel for work. The way some men curate mystery not out of trauma, but to protect the empire of deception they've built. When it was published 2 weeks later, I didn't expect much. But the responses flooded in. Hundreds of comments. I thought I was alone. This story saved me. I finally confronted him after reading this. You gave me permission to stop waiting for a man to explain what I already knew. Jennifer texted me the night it went live. Your story broke something open. I think we've both started something bigger than either of us expected. I smiled. She was right. One morning, Bailey sent me a photo of a small silver compass she had just had tattooed on her wrist. A reminder, she wrote, that I'll never lose myself in someone else's story again. That image hit me like a wave. Because that's what Mason had done, written all our roles for us, handed out scripts, made us feel special while keeping the spotlight tightly fixed on himself. But he forgot the most important rule: when you lie to women long enough, we stop auditioning for your love and start directing our own lives. Weeks passed. I spoke on a podcast. Then at a small women's entrepreneur panel. I didn't share everything, but I shared enough. Enough to help someone else see the red flags, trust their instincts, and choose peace over pleading for crumbs. And in the quiet moments, when the world was still, I would sometimes hold that compass necklace Jennifer gave me. Let the weight of it settle against my collarbone. Not to remember the betrayal, but to remember the truth I'd found underneath it. That the compass I needed was never a man, never his plans, never his promises. It was, and always would be, me. 6 months after everything collapsed, my life was calmer than it had been in years. Not perfect, not without scars, but real. And mine. I moved to a new apartment just outside Montrose. Nothing fancy. Just big enough for a desk by the window, a quiet space to write, and a little kitchen where I learned to cook for myself again, not because someone was coming over, but because I wanted to eat something that tasted like care. The old Goldie would have called that lonely. But the new Goldie? She knew better. Alone and lonely aren't the same. Alone is peace. Alone is power. Alone is not waiting for a man's schedule to align with your worth. One warm afternoon, I got a text from Jennifer. Just a photo. It was her front door, freshly painted, bright red, with a new wreath hanging from the middle. Underneath it, a brass nameplate read simply: Langford removed. No forwarding. I laughed out loud. You're a menace, I replied. No, she wrote back. I'm finally free. Bailey called a few days later. She was prepping for her move to Austin. Packing boxes. Starting over. She told me she'd started a mentorship thread through the Compass Collective for women in professional industries who'd been manipulated by their bosses or mentors. The last message she sent me just said: We're building a fire, one story at a time. You lit the first match. The strangest part of healing is that life doesn't always reward you in the ways you expect. No parade. No big cinematic moment where everything clicks back into place. But it does offer you something deeper, something quiet and strong. Like the moment you realize you no longer check your phone for his name. Like laughing without flinching. Like trusting yourself when a stranger gives you that familiar charm-heavy smile, and you smile back, because you see it now. You see everything. Sometimes I wondered what became of Mason. The last I heard, from a colleague in passing, he had applied for a position at a startup in Dallas. Word was, he didn't get it. A background flag, they said. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. He had built his life like a house of mirrors. Eventually, one by one, the reflections turned on him. Not by revenge. But by truth. And truth doesn't need to raise its voice. It just waits. 1 year to the day after that 3:11 a.m. text changed everything, I went back to that cafe near Eleanor Tinsley Park. I wore the compass necklace. Ordered the same drink I had that morning Jennifer emailed me. And I wrote a letter. Not to Mason. But to the woman I used to be. Dear Goldie. You were never stupid. You were hopeful. You believed someone could be everything he claimed. That doesn't make you weak. That makes you human. But the moment you walked into his house, sat across from his wife, and didn't blink, you became something else. You became free. You don't need someone to tell you what you're worth anymore. You already know. And every time you speak, write, or live boldly, you remind the world. You may have been deceived. But you were never defeated. Love. You. I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. I had come full circle. Not because I got revenge, but because I got myself back. Goldie's story is not just about betrayal, it's about what happens when a woman refuses to stay broken. She didn't just expose the man who lied to her, she reclaimed her voice, her strength, and her direction. And in doing so, she lit the way for others to follow. If you've ever been lied to, used, or silenced, know this, you are not alone. And you do not have to stay in the shadows of someone else's lies. Share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to Revenge Echoes for more stories where truth always finds its voice, and where women like Goldie remind us that some of the most powerful comebacks begin with heartbreak.